Hey everyone, I'm here with a quick video for on Cassie Ventura. Listen, someone is coming out and speaking on her behalf, and someone who, ironically, almost similar case. The only thing is Cassie survived. Nicole Brown Simpson, OJ Simpson's, um, it was ex-wife who he was accused of taking her life. His sister-in-law speaks out and said, please don't judge Cassie because you never walked a day in her shoes and you don't know what she went through. And she also said she learned of everything her sister went through when she was sitting in court when O.J. Simpson was on trial for taking her sister's life. So let me go ahead and share a screen so we can get more into this story. So Nicole Brown Simpson's sister, Diddy's trial feels like OJ case. She said, don't judge Cassie. So let's take a listen.
I think it's really important for people who are watching this. You know, majority of the public really are enthralled with cases like this. So my message to the people who are watching this, do not judge this girl. Do not judge this young lady. You have not walked in her shoes. I did not walk in Nicole's shoes. I learned about Nicole's abuse in court. I didn't even know. I keep in mind, I'm 10 years younger than Nicole. So here I am in court watching, witnessing my sister's battered face, and my ex-brother-in-law's a few rows up. And to the people who are viewing this case, this trial, be a little bit sensitive, because you have never walked in somebody's shoes until you actually have. This woman was under somebody's thumb.
Yeah, the parallels are interesting to think about your sister Nicole with this larger than life celebrity, O.J. Simpson, and Cassie and P. Diddy, and people who are questioning, well, wait a minute, now we're hearing these text messages where she's talking about how much she loved Diddy and how she didn't want to break up and how she wanted him to be by her side. And for the people who don't understand that can exist, but the abuse in the worst form can also exist at the same time. I guess you saw that firsthand with your situation.
Absolutely. You know, they don't engage with the monster. The monster somehow appears. Nicole didn't marry the monster. The monster appeared. The cycle of violence is all about power and control. And when you have a person who is so not only influential, but powerful and has money, and then all of a sudden you're this 18, 19-year-old girl who may have been enamored. I don't know. I never had the conversation with Nick, but maybe she was enamored. But I remember somebody, I think it was Denise or Deanne Persili in Lifetime. She said, he was molding her to be the woman he wanted her to be. Now, when you've got so much power and so much control, they fear retaliation. Why call the police? They're just going to laugh at me. I mean, look what happened to Nick in '89. You know, we've seen pictures of it, New Year's Eve, and the cops came, but he got a little slap on the wrist.
So Nicole Brown Simpson's sister is making a bunch of comparisons between the trials of O.J. Simpson and Diddy, and she sees a lot of similarities between her sister and Cassie. Tanya Brown says that the Diddy trial feels a lot like O.J.'s trial of the century, mainly because of abuse allegations and the power dynamics of both couples. Cassie gave 4 days of intense testimony last week in Diddy's federal racketeering and sex trafficking trial in New York City. And Tanya says folks following the case should not be quick to judge Cassie because they haven't walked in her shoes. Tanya told News Nation she didn't know her sister was being abused by O.J. until the trial started. And she agreed with some expert testimony in Diddy's trial that many victims stay with their abusers, find ways to cope, and don't say much about the abuse to anyone. Diddy charged with racketeering conspiracy, 2 charges of sex trafficking, and 2 charges of transportation to engage in prostitution. He pled not guilty, and his defense hasn't shied away from the domestic violence stories being told in court. OJ was tried and acquitted for Nicole and Ron Goldman's murder, but a civil jury later found him liable for their deaths. Whew. So DV exists. It exists on all economic levels. It exists with people that don't have money. It exists with people that do have money. And it exists, everywhere in between. The best I could say is, now this is I gotta remind myself exactly when Nicole Simpson lost her life, right? So, but before that, so at least we know they was together in 1994. Let me start with that. I could lead with that and have the conversation with that. So they was together in 1994. At the very least, we know from this picture. And the claim was that there was domestic violence throughout their entire relationship. So it was 1994, and we're over from 1994, over 20 years later, and we're still hearing about domestic violence. I want to say this, and we're still hearing, not only are we still hearing about domestic violence, we're still hearing about how people feel they can't leave when they're in said situations, and we're 20 years out. So at some point, someone has to put the road and the footwork down and the blueprint down to say, how do I, if I find myself in said situation, how do I get out? And how do I get out? Not decades later, not years later, not 30 days later. How do I get out as soon as I recognize that this is a problem? So as many people want to say, Diva, you're condoning what Diddy did, this, that, and the other. I ignore that, because sometimes that's what you got to do when you're on these platforms. You got to put a coat of armor on, because the people will beat you down for every word that comes out your mouth. But I'm one for a blueprint. I grew up in poverty. I'll tell anybody that listen, I grew up in severe poverty. Okay. I remember, I don't know if people remember, or if anybody could relate. They call it social services now. When I was growing up, they called it welfare. And then now they put your money on a debit card. So you have a little more, can be a little more humane when you have a debit card. Because, if you're in the line of a supermarket, people don't really know unless there's something going on. You also have like the vouchers if you have a baby, but I won't go so far into all that. But people don't know if you're sticking your debit card in there, whether you using a debit card from social services or just your regular debit card. But when I was growing up, it was no debit card for your social services benefits. It was a book of, it looked like fake money. They called it food stamps. Okay. They called it food stamps. So as you was counting them out and trying to pay your grocery bill, everybody on the line behind you would know what you were doing and that you had food stamps. What is Diva trying to say here? What I'm trying to say is, if at some point we don't put the blueprint down, or we don't start the conversation to say, how do you get out of it? People love the conversation of, you don't understand. There was no way for this person to get out. You don't understand what happens to victims. You don't understand this. I understand. What I'm not understanding is, why is no one starting to have the conversation to tell people ahead of time, or even in the midst of it, this is how you get out? I want to commend the person that say, this is your way out. My way of trying to help people from the door is by always saying to y'all, don't get connected to things. Every time, a lot of times when we hear these stories, money is connected. I literally don't care. To me, if you got to go live in a studio apartment, but have your own peace of mind and nobody's beating you down, and you get your clothes from Walmart, Target, the thrift store, let it be what it is. Now, many of you might not even notice, but I promise you, I have two sweaters. I have a beige one. I tend to lean towards the black one more. These two sweaters, they're beat down, but they are my go-to sweaters when I do my lives. I know I'm not buying a whole bunch of clothes with 55 shirts. I mean, every now and then I change it up. I do a little something different. But I got two go-to sweaters. The only reason why I'm pointing that out to you is to say this. You gotta say to yourself, what is more important to me? Sometimes an image is what keep people in bondage. Sometimes it's the status keeps people in bondage. Sometimes it is the material things that will keep people in bondage. I'd rather drive a no-name car versus a luxury car if that luxury car is tied to me being with a partner who's paying for the car and they don't like me and I don't like them and they treat me bad and I'm treating them bad or whatever. So no, I would never victim shame. But I also am not one to stay in a place of woe is me. At some point, we got to rise up, rise above, educate ourselves, and say, you know what? I can do better. I'm worth more. I am worthy. Care what you look like. I don't care if you got 30 missing teeth. Care if you got no hair in your head. I don't care if you got a lot of hair in your head. And we know now that if you think about this, Cassie is absolutely gorgeous and still suffered all of this. So I lean back to nobody's going to treat you better than you treat yourself. But listen, guys, chat with me in the comments. And when I get an opportunity, I will chat back. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, you will be notified. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Everybody, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on Nicole Simpson's sister saying, don't judge Cassie. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.